Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very special show where we are going to deal with the latest regarding the Ukrainian crisis after the Russian military operation. And we start with the latest updates. An air alert was declared Wednesday morning in and around Kiev, with residents urged to get to bomb shelters as quickly as possible. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a decree prohibiting the import and export of certain products and raw materials. A list of affected countries will be drawn up in the coming days, and at least 1.33 million people have arrived in Poland from Ukraine since Russia launched its military invasion. Poland's embassy to the European Union tweeted Wednesday, citing figures from the country's border guard agency. In another step from the West in its series of sanctions against Moscow, US President Joe Biden, the United States is banning Russian oil, natural gas and coal imports to the US, a step he warned could lead to spiking gas prices at home. Nabil Khazini.
The Russian energy imports will no longer be received in the United States. Joe Biden announced his administration is banning Russian oil, natural gas and coal imports to the United States.
Today, I'm announcing the United States is targeting the main artery of Russia's economy. We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy.
American motorists were already paying high pump prices, and this decision will make bills go even costlier. Joe Biden knows that.
When I first spoke to this, I said defending freedom is going to cost. It's going to cost us as well in the United States.
The United Kingdom, shortly afterwards, announced it will phase out imports of Russian oil and oil products by the end of this year, giving itself a time to find alternatives.
The UK will phase out the import of Russian oil and oil products by the end of 2022. This transition will give the market, businesses and supply chains more than enough time to replace Russian imports, which make up 8% of UK demand.
While British oil giant Shell announced on Tuesday its intention to withdraw from Russian oil and gas gradually to align with new directives from the British government. But unlike the European Union, both the United States and the United Kingdom do not depend heavily on Russian energy. Russia accounts for just 7% of the oil imported by the world's biggest economy, while 3/5 of Russia's oil exports go to the EU.
British Prime Minister said the United Kingdom will UK move away from dependence on Russian oil by the end of 2022. Let's have a listen.
We must do everything we can to protect consumers and the public. There are going to be impacts. Let's be in no doubt there are going to be impacts. But I think that it's the right thing to do. But we've got to, and it's the right thing. It's completely the right thing to do to move away from Russian hydrocarbons, from dependence on Russian hydrocarbons, but we've got to do it step by step. So far, the success of the West has been in the unity that we've shown. I think we're all increasingly united in the view that we've got to move away now from Russian hydrocarbons. We've got to do it together. We've got to make sure that we have substitute and substitute supply, and that's what we're working on as well.
As Russia is facing unprecedented sanctions from the West, a huge number of corporations and businesses are suspending their operations in Russia or making plans to do so, piling on the pressure. From McDonald's, Coca-Cola to Apple, Disney and TikTok, top brands and industry leaders are cutting ties with Russia following the Russian military operation in Ukraine. The European Commission announces a plan to cut Russian gas imports by 2/3 this year. Let's have a listen.
By the end of this year, we can replace 100 BCM of gas imports from Russia. That is 2/3 of what we import from them. This will end our over-dependency and give us much-needed room to maneuver. It's hard, bloody hard, but it's possible if we're willing to go further and faster than we've done before.
And finally, following the quick updates concerning the Russian-Ukrainian crisis, Britain unveiled on Wednesday new aviation sanctions, giving it to the power to detain any Russian aircraft and banning exports of aviation or space-related goods to Russia. Britain will also strengthen its ban on Russia aircraft, making it a criminal offence to any to fly or land in the United Kingdom. As we have just followed, the economic and energy sector will dominate our discussion. And just let me welcome our panel of guests. Hamoud Salhi, Associate Dean Professor from the United States, in addition to Don McLean, Gale, geopolitics and analyst and author, who joins us live via Skype from the Philippines. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. And I start with you, Hamoud. Do you think that the US is taking strategic decisions by banning Russian oil and energy?
Strategic decision, yes and no. There is always in the United States, or has been, this look at the energy from several perspectives, that it is a very high commodity. Back in mid-2005, or around that, they start to explore in Africa and made the African oil, as strategic. But in this case, it is more of a symbolic gesture, meaning that, number one, the oil that comes from Russia to the United States is very low, less than 10%, even some say only 3%. The second thing, we have seen already measures to ban this oil that comes probably indirectly by decision put on the SWIFT system, the closure or the company not willing to ship or work in or make any transactions or go to the Black Sea because of the high insurance prices. This is due to the fact that this area is considered under war, so the insurance premium is very expensive. The third thing is the supply chain, which has been very difficult to move around. So it is more symbolic than anything. It meets the public opinion, the American interest, and what is expected. What's the next step is doing. But so in many ways, it is not strategic. It is more likely as a symbolic gesture reflecting what is already done on the ground.
Hamoud, since you are an American, living in the United States, the simple American citizens wakes up this morning and see a hike in prices of fuel the first time in 14 years. Can you just give us an idea about the reaction of the American citizen?
So we already have seen a lot of concern, a lot of complaint. It became, as somebody described it, as a subject that you want to talk about. It's like that program you try to avoid. It's very, very serious in the United States because we have been accustomed to prices not going above $4. And when they go up to $5, we start to get scary. It is getting at $6 or $7 in this area. And what makes it also very difficult is that the media is also playing on this too much. In other words, the conservative, if we want to describe it, Biden administration tend to show the prices of oil in California, which are at $7. The average in the United States oil prices is around $4. So it's been really very, very difficult for the Americans, and it is a subject that is very well discussed, and it may have a big impact of how this administration will address this issue, coupled with the fact that you have high prices of other commodities, of basic needs, and high inflation. All of these are serious issues that down the road, they will have an impact how this administration will continue to view this war.
Haven't you felt any sort of changes in the prices of fuel this morning when you woke up?
Oh, of course you do. You try to avoid the gas stations because, number one, we also see in lines the expectation that the prices will go higher and higher. The second thing is that you really try to avoid using the car, especially in California, as much as you can. And this is in the absence in many areas of weak public transportation system. It varies from one state to another, but in most cases, California is hit very bad, and this will be definitely something that Americans will consider in how they view what's happening in the Ukraine.
Let me just bring into our conversation, according to what you have just brought as a witness, Hamoud Salhi. Don, don't you think that this will hurt simply the pocket of the innocent American citizens? Why does he have to pay for this proxy war?
Right. Thank you so much for having me. And that is indeed a very important question. And I agree with my co-panelist. The thing that we have to take note is, currently speaking, in a Wall Street Journal poll, at least 79% of Americans supported this decision to ban Russian oil. And as we have all seen from the statistics, Russian oil accounts for only less than 10% of U.S. oil imports. So the current administration really has successfully been able to, for the short term, shift the attention of the American people from a socio-economic perspective to that of a completely political perspective. However, challenges are bound to happen in the long run. Despite the energy independence of the United States, for that matter, it still has a problem in controlling production. And this will inevitably have long-term consequences which will impact the people for that particular matter, and will also be a problem in maintaining a significant positivity rating for the current administration. And of course, this also fuels in with the Ukrainian foreign minister, who recently said and urged people around the world to really ban Russian oil. So these factors, symbolic and geopolitical, come at the expense of the socio-economic.
So here, Don, you think that the United States or the Biden administration didn't really study this decision, or they have just taken it in a rush, just in a reaction to what's happening on the ground in Ukraine?
Well, again, it's very important to note the political factor of this particular decision. As we are aware, foreign policy decisions are taken primarily with the use of domestic support and interest groups. So as we can see with the numbers, a lot of Americans support this particular decision. However, everyone knows that this will have significant consequences. The Biden administration understands that this will have consequences. And it's interesting because the opposition also supports this, despite several criticisms here and there, but they say that
this actually leads me to the next question that I am going to put to you, Don. Well, both Democrats and Republicans held this step. Is it too rare? We can notice that when both polls get to agree. Why this time?
Right. And as I've mentioned, first of all, the numbers, the support of the people, and second, the support of the opposition would definitely not come without a price. As we are aware, the possible shock to the system, the socio-economic levels, would be catastrophic, considering that they are already facing significant constraints with inflation and fuel rates. So this could be a particular alternative and a potential stepping stone for the opposition to really pound on the current administration and get political support for this, considering that the challenges involved will be inevitable. So again, the Biden administration knows this as well, but because of the constraints that it is facing, and which has moved him to force this particular step, the opposition are also well aware and are waiting carefully about the impact that could happen with this particular setting. And if this goes according to how we see it would go, the negative impact, this would give leverage to the opposition as well. So we always have to take that into consideration, as no support comes without a price, as I have mentioned.
So let me just put it to you, Hamoud, this way. Don't you think that this decision on banning the Russian and energy sector is going to harm the reputation of the Biden administration later on and his popularity in the public opinion, taking into consideration that the American Congress is 8 months from today will hold its congressional midterm elections?
I think there are a number of factors. Perhaps in the upcoming elections, which, as you said, Nadia, coming up in a few months, 8 months from now, foreign policy or the record of the current president will be at stake. This is how the American will view the upcoming elections. There was, number one, the Afghan debacle, and that played a major effect on Biden's popularity to a point where it is at the lowest, the lowest among any previous president at this time, or particularly since the Second World War. Connected to that, there is, on the one hand, Americans, by the vast majority, don't want to get involved in Ukraine, and more anything else, they don't want the United States to take part in any international conflict. Sending troops is a no at this point. There is a huge
effect. But
Hamoud,
here, they have agreed both on this decision, which, indirectly is going to harm the American economy and society. They are paying for this proxy war as well from the part of the United States.
They are, and that's where the consequences are to be sort of looked at. What we are looking at this point is that the president, Biden, is managing, on the one hand, public opinion, and at the same time trying to lead the world in this confrontation against Russia. In the middle of this, on the mix of this, there is this American public, there is this high inflation, there are these prices that are going up. There is this perception that Biden is not the leader that could lead the United States from these huge problems. What is very, very interesting is that this administration has made major achievement. Unemployment at its lowest in American history. The infrastructure
What are these
bill,
achievements, like pulling the people and the United States budget again after at least the USA has pulled itself from Afghanistan, and they're finding themselves again indirectly into a war?
The challenge for this administration is a lack of a consistent, coherent message. The Republicans are very, very strong in projecting messages that shows unity and that emphasize on criticism more than anything else. And then they are consistent. They continue propagating their message, whether it's false or wrong. They are very vocal at attacking the President Biden, also always looking at the problems, not the solution. More than anything else, they are very united. Take the other side, the Democrats. The Democrats are divided between on generational act, for example, with the older generation, more seen as part of the establishment. The Democrats see the establishment as not different from the Republican. And then you have this younger generation who have social agendas, but they are not united. There are those who want the United States to be more active in social issues and humanitarian issues, while others don't want the United States to be involved in those, but more focused on the problems of internal problems, including education, social benefits, healthcare, all those.
Don't you think that, Hamoud, that this small part are going to turn the table, if we can say, on Biden later on?
A big time. His failure, for example, to address the issue of immigration will affect his vote and his perception among the Hispanic population. His lack of, the civil rights voting bill the changes that have been made in the voting system, and which impact African Americans will also impact him. A general pattern that the the midterm elections like this one that are coming, usually the incumbent who is ever in the Washington in the White House loses votes in Congress. But this looks like a debacle for the Biden administration. They're going to lose a lot of people in the House of Representatives and so in the Senate.
We will see what might happen in a couple of months. Now, since you have just talked, Hamoud, about inflation, Don, in addition to suffering from inflation, Biden seems quite sure about bearing the side effects of this decision. Is it likely to be in short term or long term?
Right. And we have to understand, and the explanation to this particular question has to be looked at within the domestic level and, of course, its implications on the international level. So, yes, we have already highlighted the political risks of this particular decision. On top of that, the foreign policy decisions that the Biden administration has been making shows a lot of flip-flopping between the application of realpolitik and the application of the promotion of democratic values. And this lack of consistency will definitely bring about negative perceptions within and out of the country as well. And on top of that, if we look into the overall risks long term, we have to understand that geopolitics plays a huge role here. Russia is a top provider, exporter of energy and natural gas, and though there are countries that are more affected than others, if we look into Europe, for example, it accounts for nearly 40% of its supply of natural gas and a quarter of the crude oil it imports. And this could push them, of course, with the Biden administration putting a sanction on this, these European partners and allies would be forced inevitably to pave the same way. And this is also dangerous because of their awareness of the domestic instability that could occur. This would be an issue also for these European partners and allies of the United States. And Germany has voiced out very clearly that it's not willing to cut off imports just like that because of the effects that it could have. So we could see that there may be differences despite the promotion of the whole unity conception. There would be differences, of course, within the alliance system, and this could be the long-term effect of this particular.
We will go through
Right.
later on into these, let's say, where the USA probably and the European countries may not agree. Back to you, Hamoud, here. Biden seems not to be interested in facing Putin, but now he faces the American citizen. Do you think that the American citizen is easy to handle?
Oh, not easy. But the idea of facing Putin is very, very interesting. What we have seen is, remember, this is the president who called Putin a killer. This is also the person or the president who made it clear to the American public that he will stand and firm against Putin, and he will not repeat the same mistake that they did back in 2014 under the Obama administration. And definitely he will not be not follow or do what former President Donald Trump did, which is Biden was very sympathetic to Putin. He said a lot of nice things about Putin. So that's the image that you see from the other side. And this really fits very well what the Americans are expecting of their leaders, is to show leadership internationally and to stand against leaders, other leaders.
Here, just remind us of the fact that the United States always has this policy of creating let's say, someone that they need to fight.
The idea is that you have to have an enemy.
Yeah, always an enemy.
And
to face.
When the Soviet Union collapsed, NATO gave us, and the European unions were very quick at saying, well, we don't have the Soviet Union, but wait a minute, we have this Islamist terrorists.
Yeah.
So the NATO's mission was the Islamist fundamentalists, and then later on we were told, it's this terrorist leaders, rogue leaders, and they looked at the world from those perspective. It is this search for the the enemy that is actually creating major problems today. And it's reflective of, long tradition of looking at the world from the perspective, this is the Western world, from a colonial perspective. The European perspective has not changed. It still views the world as different. What we've seen today in the Ukraine, the way the media is very sympathetic, and I mean by the mainstream media, to the plight of the Ukrainian, and nobody is designed. This is saying this is not how it should be. The Ukraine should not be going through what they are going through. This is a humanitarian disaster and should be taken seriously. But the biasness, the reporting that views, for example, Afghans and Palestinians are uncivilized and therefore they deserve what they're getting is really appalling and disgusting in more ways than one. So from that perspective, yes, it is. The other thing in terms of the leadership, what we've seen even since the 80s, when Margaret Thatcher took, for example, the helm of the premier and was faced with the Falkland Island problem, at the time, every British public opinion thought that the Britain will not be involved in the Falkland Island issue because, number one, she is a woman, and secondly, Falkland Island was not that issue. But what Margaret Thatcher did is the opposite. They went to war in Falkland, and since then, Margaret Thatcher was seen as a leader, and she was voted more than I believe 3 times. So the point that leadership is very, very important in the eye of the Westerners, and particularly the Americans. What they see now is Biden is missing that.
All right. Back to you, Don, here. Are we in front of reshaping the economy of the USA after yesterday's immediate decision on banning Russian energy sector from the USA, from Russia?
Right. This is a very critical question. In fact, we should look at it not only based on this current situation, but from the COVID-19 experience. Nationally speaking, in the United States, people are now turning towards the idea of self-sufficiency on that matter. We've seen former President Trump advocate an American First policy, and if we look at it, step a little further, out of the country, we can see that there are several countries that have looked inward, that have began looking inwards because of the effects of the negative effects of interdependence, of economic interdependence. So if you're already seeing it in America, it has been done before, and people are now the discussions, the discourses towards this approach is increasing by the day. It's inevitable that other countries throughout the globe would be looking into inward policies that would really focus on nationalist policies for the economy, self-sufficiency. We can see India, for example, France, for example, and other countries, major countries throughout the world, have been really trying to reshape the mainstream idea of economic interdependence and globalization. Is that
but Don, these decisions were not well studied. They were just overnight taken just because of the Russian military operation in Ukraine. How can you change a whole economy, an economic system overnight?
Right, that's exactly right. In fact, again, this particular situation added further to the fire. This added more fuel to the fire of the already happening discussions on worrying about the dependence on global supply chains. And because of this particular decision, it aggravated further the ideas of several policymakers to look inwards rather than outwards. If you can see that the effects, people are also learning how sanctions really work as well. And, in other countries, they are worried as well of this particular situation, that one day this may happen, this may not happen, how would it affect them? So that level of the need for self-sufficiency has been significantly enhanced. And this decision overnight has added a significant dimension to this worry. And as we can see, policymakers around the world are now scrambling to look for alternative situations and solutions that would aid the economy since that everything is already going on the downward because of the pandemic as well. So everything just it keeps adding up, and it creates a negative perception of too much interdependence in global supply chains and globalization. So if this continues, we can see a further further movement towards this direction. It has been done before. It may happen again, though selectively, but not globally, but selectively it may happen.
All right. Back to you, Hamoud. In his speech, Biden said it clearly that the price won't be easy. Is he preparing the American citizen for the worst?
President Biden was expected in his State of Union to do just that, to tell the American, look, I understand your pain, I share it, and will do all I can to make your life easier. And this is, again, is a repetition. What is lacking, a consistent message, driving to the point that I feel your pain, sort of a speech. This is a very, very serious problem for this administration, because there is a lack of connecting with the American people. When inflation is getting higher and higher, that is problematic. But then there is another issue that we would consider. For example, this past 2 years or so, working online, using technology as a means to take care of business is also having some impact on the working conditions, the working morale, and more than anything else, there is a transformation the American economy from relying more and more on technology. For example, in defense, we created the drones and the the drone planes and things like that. Now there is also within the American policy, we're talking about trucks driving the American freeway without drivers. The impact on that is huge because it will affect the truckers. There are at least 300,000 of them who are going to be affected by the shift in this new type of economy. All that is rooted in the American society because the truck drivers tend to come from a different background, people who did not go to the university, and there are a lot of them who have not done that, who have not achieved a bachelor's degree, for example. So the effect of that is very serious. So it's a matter of things coming all together. The pandemic effect, this war, it is frankly too much on the Americans, and the Biden administration
yes, Hamoud, too much for the whole world, which apparently President Putin has all changed in just through one decision of launching this military operation in Ukraine. Here I bring back Don and I ask you that Avril Haines said that all of this may not push back Putin. Do you agree?
There are significant concerns even within Washington and out of Washington that these sanctions may not be enough to sort of create the effect or the outcome that they were hoping for. In fact, many have argued that these sanctions are merely, it's the same vodka in a different bottle. So, these are the things that we have to take into consideration, is that some of these sanctions are already the continuation of previous sanctions. And on top of that, because of these sanctions, Russia, for that matter, has been trying to recalibrate its policies to be able to cushion himself from these particular sanctions. Now, of course, some sanctions hurt significantly, especially those revolving around the SWIFT ban. However, the outcome that they were hoping to achieve right away has not been achieved. And this is because there are also differences in the international community of states regarding their perception towards the ongoing situation. So these are the things that we have to take into consideration, the selectiveness of these sanctions, and of course the possible impact these sanctions can have on those applying the sanctions, particularly Europe, regarding the energy supplies. President Putin has time and time again emphasized that he may close the supply towards them, which would be definitely catastrophic. as far as their economies are concerned. And it's this tit for tat sort of thing that makes it really difficult to see the complete effectiveness of sanctions.
All right.
And
well, Hamoud, on the other hand, why do you think that British Prime Minister has used the word or the decision to gradually ban Russian oil and energy? Why didn't he take a direct or direct ban on Russian energy sector as the USA did?
It could be simply because, and it's the same example of the United States. Britain doesn't import, is not affected as much as the other European. I think it's about 8% or so, as your report indicated before. So there is that factor. The other factor is also Britain trying to find a role in European politics or in global politics, particularly with the Brexit, which is going nowhere from that angle. They have proposal on the table to be playing a role in this crisis, which is really not different from any other proposal, and which may not be that achievable. But I think it's the reality is that Britain can afford to do this at this point, not other countries in Europe.
All right. Back to you, Don. What would be the alternative for the Russian energy when it comes or taking into consideration that Venezuela and Iran, who are both under American sanctions?
Right. In fact, this is a very interesting point. In fact, this goes back to what I said earlier about U.S. policies and their decision-making, which really flip-flops on the use of realpolitik and the promotion of democratic values. We have to understand why these countries, Venezuela or Iran, for example, were part of the sanctions list. In fact, because they acted in a way that was, against democratic liberal values, which the United States considers itself to be a gatekeeper of, and the promotion of which is vital for American foreign policy. Now, we see that because of this possible shift of going back to these countries and to use them as an alternative, we have also seen negative reactions within the United States about the inconsistency in its approach to, in its foreign policy approach and security approach. And in fact, it's because of this particular issue that may be at the peril of the current administration. As we have seen, exactly. So as we have seen that these steps that the Biden administration will take may seriously hurt the credibility of the United States as a promoter of democratic values and peace and liberal values. So these decisions, this flip-flopping, could come at the expense of the administration.
All right. Still with you, Don. Russia says it's looking for solutions to workers in the energy companies who left the country, or they are planning to leave the country right after the decision of the United States and other European countries. Is this going to push Russia to study its military operation in Ukraine?
Right, absolutely. And of course, as we all know by now, the military operations in Ukraine have not delivered significantly in terms of time, because time is of a great essence here. And while Russia has significantly secured the southern part of Ukraine towards the sea, it is important to note that still there is space to recalibrate its political, its military posture, and of course the military policies that it has used. And in fact, as we can see now with the changes that are happening of a possibility of compromise and negotiation between Zelensky and President Putin, this is something that we have to expect now, that we have to really pay attention to.
All right.
As this may lead to a new change.
Just 2 minutes left from this show. I just probably wrap up with you, Hamoud. If ever we have time, I'll get back to you, Don. Can we expect a split against Putin from Russian oligarchs?
We start to see that, but I think it's getting very, very complicated because the sanctions are, are going to affect people in different ways. For example, the sanctions on the airlines, for example, the Russian airlines will have a big impact on the travel prices. It will increase. So the relationship between the oligarch is very deeply rooted. It cannot be. There is always a way for it to work, but there is a sense at this point that at one point or another there will be some distance. But in many ways, if you are a leader and you are engaged in this kind of conflict, in this Ukraine conflict, this is expected, and the problem is how long it will last. The longer this, the more likely that division will surface.
As a yes/no question, Hamoud, do you think that if ever we see a breakthrough in this crisis, is it going to be easy to amend the Russian-USA and European relations? Yes or no? Is it going to be easy?
Yes and no, in fact. Yeah, there is no yes and no. It all depends how this will resolve. Yeah,
all right.
But I think it will be. It will be a difficult road.
All right. What about you, Don? Is it going to be easy for amending all of these relations if ever we witness a breakthrough? Yes or no?
It will definitely not be easy, but again, it will depend on the situation at hand. There is a danger of, acting simplistically with this particular situation.
Thank you so much, Hamoud Salhi, Associate Dean Professor from the United States, in addition to Don McLean. Gail, you joined us from the Philippines. You are a geopolitics and analyst and author. Thank you so much for following us on Alt 24 News. Bye-bye for now.